All right, let's let the record reflect. We've reconvened with all members present, virtually present on February 8th, 2021. And please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I do want to take a moment for two people that we've lost in the last 2 weeks. Eleanor Cirillo died on Friday, February 5th at the age of 100. She died at the Community Medical Center in Toms River after a brief illness that was not related to COVID-19. She was born Eleanor DeFalco on July 10th, 1920 in Morristown to the late Vincent and Gaetano DeFalco, and was raised in Morristown with her sister and 4 brothers. She moved to Madison after marrying her husband, the late Jerry Cirillo. Eleanor and Jerry were blessed with 2 sons, Jerry Jr. and Bo, who was a member of our DPW until shortly before his death a few years ago. Prior to retirement, she was a salesperson for a few different drugstores and department stores in the Madison area, and she was talented at knitting and sewing and loved shopping. And she was predeceased by her husband Jerry in 1992, and as mentioned, her son Bo, and survived by her son Jerry, and also 3 brothers and 1 cherished grandson. And then on January 26th, we lost George Shorty Tyree, who died at the age of 67. George was born in Morristown in 1953 to his parents Elizabeth and the late George Tyree Sr. Raised in Madison with his 2 sisters and a graduate of Madison High School. And I think it was years before many in Madison knew that that Shorty's real name was George. It certainly took me a good number of years to know Shorty by anything except for Shorty. But it should be known that as a player, coach, and referee, Shorty stood tall. Ever since he was young, George loved sports, especially basketball and football. He played for football from Madison High School, eventually went on to referee Madison Little League football as a young man. And while it's been years since he lived in Madison, he left a mark on a generation of Madison basketball players, as was shown in a picture that my youngest brother, Stephen, posted that included, along with my brother, lifelong resident Sam Antone and former resident Michael Valkes, just 3 of the many that Shorty touched over the years in his coaching. He served for decades as a referee in local high school football and basketball, and took up a second passion of golf. He worked part-time for nearly a decade at the pro shop of Flanders Golf Course, and it was a familiar face there. And before his retirement, George was supervisor of mailroom at GPU Energy in Parsippany, and then with Mondelez International. He was predeceased by his beloved father, George Tyree.
We lost you, Mayor.
It looks like I might have slipped out there for a second. I'm not too sure where I was, but let us now take a moment to remember Eleanor Cirillo, George Shorty Tyree, and let us pass our thoughts on to the families and friends they leave behind. Thank you. May I have a motion for the special meeting minutes of December 28th, 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. And a motion for the executive minutes of January 25th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Any, we've already had discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Let it reflect, it was unanimous. Also, a motion for the regular minutes of January 25th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Or I'm sorry, any corrections or changes?
I gave Liz a few.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay.
All right, I am back on my laptop. Sorry for all this disruption. All right, welcome everyone. And it certainly looks like winter has arrived with our multi-day storm that dumped nearly 20 inches of snow. That was followed by yesterday's so-called 2 inches that was more like 6 to 8 inches here in Madison, but at least it was fluffy stuff. I want to, as I walk around, I get to see neighbors who are helping out neighbors. So thank you all for helping those that are maybe elderly or don't have the wherewithal to clear the sidewalks on their own. But I also want to remind all to ensure the sidewalks are clear so that residents can continue their walking routines that they have started so in such a dedicated way through this pandemic. And a big thank you to our Public Works Department. Tuesday morning after that multi-day storm, looked out the morning very early and you could see blacktop out there. And we even had a compliment from a neighboring mayor that was very impressed with the work our crews have done. And then downtown was, I don't know how many times I've heard from shop owners that were so thankful for the quick reclaiming of parking spots and then the removing the wall of snow that would have blocked access to stores. So, see our DPW crew, please give them a wave of thank you as we truly appreciate their dedication. And of course, if we didn't have enough winter already, we're predicted to get a few more inches tomorrow and maybe 6 inches plus on Thursday. Keep our fingers crossed. On Friday, January 29th, I cut the ribbon for Rocco's Trattoria and Pizzeria right on Main Street. And it was an honor to join 3 generations of the Iosas. Rocco, who opened Madison's first pizzeria on Park Avenue over 60 years ago. His son Gino, who owns the current restaurant, and Gino's son Christian, who is keeping up the family tradition of excellent Italian food. And the employee of the month is someone very common to this title, and looks like she may even have some family that have joined in the meeting tonight, which is great. But to no surprise, our employee of the month, Marlene Dolan, Madison Public Health Nurse, who's for the month of February. In my New Year's message, I called her our very own Dr. Fauci because she is so on top of everything that's going on, providing advice and counsel and just remaining calm through everything that's been going on. But this time she's been recognized for coming into work on her day off to vaccinate 90 seniors at the Rexford Tucker apartment complex to make sure things that would run smoothly. And to understand the impact on the residents there, I did visit during the day and watch Marlene keeping track to make sure they stay there for their required at least 15 minutes after the vaccine before they went on to their routines of the day. But one of the residents said, I will finally be able to see my grandchildren after so many months. So this is what it meant to me. And that was just one example of everything she's been doing, including the contract tracing. And as I said before, just being our information guru on everything you need to know. I do want to share a message from the executive director of the Madison Housing Authority, Tanya Van Order. This is what she said. What a day we had yesterday at our senior building vaccine clinic. Hard to express the relief and exhilaration we all feel. I want to lift up the considerable contribution from Marlene Dolan, who had a scheduled day off, and redirect her plan to assist us all day. Marlene was on her feet nonstop from 9:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., taking on the critical task of vaccine follow-up observation. I'm greatly relieved that she has offered to assist us again at the second dose appointment. The collaboration, support, and direction we have from Marlene has been invaluable throughout our unprecedented pandemic journey. So, to our employee of the month, Marlene Dolan. Thank you so much, Marlene. And we've got one presentation, and this presentation will be Audrey Bailey, a councilwoman, of course, and also a member of the Garden Club of Madison. And this is a recognition. The Smithsonian Archives of American Gardens presented us with a certificate of appreciation signed by the Smithsonian Secretary Lonnie Bunch. Thanks for participation by project members of the Garden Club of America to document the Borough of Madison Rose Garden Park. And this is such a beautiful center right across from Hartley Dodge, a place to just get away from the craziness, just blocks away, and to relax. And the work they've done is incredible. We'll let, as I hand off this proclamation, I'll let Audrey talk a little bit more about it, but I was also alerted that not only do us humans get to enjoy it, but it's a sanctuary wait station for the monarch butterflies. So, Audrey, here is the certificate, and it off to you, and if you could say a few.
Thank you, Mayor. I practiced.
Excellent.
Thank you. On behalf of the Garden Club of Madison, I'm happy to receive this certificate of appreciation from the Smithsonian. Several of our members spent many hours documenting this garden and fulfilling the requirements of the Smithsonian to have this garden in the Smithsonian archives. So what's really cool about this is that if you go to the Smithsonian website, you can actually see the documentation, you can see the garden, you can read the file, and it's an invaluable resource for professionals and novices alike to use in the study and appreciation of gardens and garden design. So this is a big honor to Madison to have this in the Smithsonian, and to our garden club who spent many hours working to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you for representing the Garden Club, and please thank them for all the work.
Will do.
And now we move on to reports and committees. Public Safety, Council President Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. From the Police Department, Sergeant Bart Lab received the Mothers Against Drunk Driving Recognition Award for his efforts to keep Madison streets safe from impaired drivers. And from the Fire Department, during the month of January, the Fire Department responded to 11 general alarms, 12 still alarms, 34 investigations, 26 EMS calls, for a total of 83 calls the month. On Friday, February 5th, around 11 a.m., Madison firefighters responded into Morristown with our ladder truck, along with other fire departments and agencies, to assist the Morristown Fire Department at a commercial structure fire. And then the recent snowstorm that dumped approximately 24 inches of snow through the borough buried most of, if not all, of approximately 675 fire hydrants. They estimated that only 15 to 25% of them have been cleared by the day after the storm concluded. Some residents did clear hydrants close to or on their property, and we're very thankful for this. We were asking more residents to help clear hydrants. Madison firefighters, electric department personnel, DPW, interns, Madison High School students, and a private contractor that was hired all worked to clear the remaining hydrants, which took 4 days to do. We ask all residents to not pile snow on hydrants or plow them in when clearing their property. Please help by cleaning your hydrant. Thank you to all who cleared their hydrants. And that's the report.
Thank you very much. And Finance and Borough Clerk, Ms. Bailey.
Thank you. Last reminder, the first quarter property taxes were due February 1st, but there is a 10-day grace period. So we have until the end of the day on Wednesday to make your payments to avoid interest and penalties. And given the pandemic, we are encouraging residents to either mail in their payment or to pay online. Having your payment wired from your bank to the borough is very easy at this point. Just visit rosenet.org, click on the link that says online bill pay, and just follow the instructions. So payments must be received in the office by the close of business on Wednesday. And tonight, we continue to discuss the budget. We're going to do the overall budget, municipal fund balance, and the impact the pandemic has on both of them. On February 22nd, we have department head presentations and a second discussion on the draft budget. And at that point in time, we'll also have the strategic planning guidelines and alternate budget format will be presented. So if there's consensus on the 22nd, we will authorize the administration to draft the official state budget document. And then on the 22nd of March, we have our final discussion. And on April 26th, after a 28-day period, the council holds a hearing and adopts the budget. So tonight is pretty significant because we're going to see that the pandemic did have a very large impact on the borough's finances in 2020. And we as a council need to discuss this impact not only on this budget, but future budgets, because it's clear that it's going to have an effect. And one of the biggest concerns for us is the tax appeals. And we'll hear a little bit more about that on our office buildings. The borough collects about $72 million in property taxes, with over 62% of that, or $44.6 million, going to the Board of Education. Another 16.2% goes to the county, but the remaining 21.8% goes to fund our budget and provides the services that the residents expect. The 6 large office buildings in town pay over $5 million in property taxes every year. And that is about 7% of our property taxes that we collect. So obviously, that's a big deal if we start losing that money from the commercial district. And we also have a big impact has been for the commuters to New York City. We used to collect $275,000 in revenue for commuter parking fees, and that doesn't exist right now. So, and we're not sure that it will come back before COVID. And just, so you know that Madison actually has maintained a strong financial picture. We're not going to have to borrow because of COVID. Like the town of Garfield, New Jersey had to borrow $2 million just to pay their bills. And fortunately, we're not going to have to do that, but we are going to have to make some decisions about, what we can do and not do. So that's what we'll be doing tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And Public Works and Engineering, Mr. Hoover.
Thank you, Mayor. There's no doubt in my mind that the reason why we are the #1 community to live in New Jersey is because of the quality of our staff in Madison and our volunteers. This week, the spotlight shines on the staff of DPW. They have just done an outstanding job of clearing the streets and continuing to work on making that happen. We have gotten comments from, as the mayor indicated, people from outside of our community who come into Madison to eat or shop and say that their towns don't even compare to the clearing that has been going on in Madison. DPW has been busy around the clock with snow removal operations due to the recent 2 storms. The initial focus was on clearing roadways and school zones. The next phase was trucking snow out of the commercial district, including all of Main Street, Waverly Place, and Lincoln Place. Current work continues clearing our 650 fire hydrants, as you've heard from Maureen, in concert with the fire department personnel. Removing large piles of snow in our parking lots to improve visibility and safety, and widening intersections to make it easier to navigate the roads. In addition, DPW staff dealt with 2 water main breaks, at Troy Court and Burnett Road, and they worked nonstop to alleviate that problem. 1,848 tons of leaves, 563.25 tons of tree parts, 2.6 tons of brush, and 2 tons of tree stumps picked up in the fall by DPW crews and stored at the DPW yard were removed by our contract vendor in January. The vacated spaces where we truck the snow removed from downtown. DPW staff will be attending safety classes and training in the spring regarding pesticides, grass maintenance, and environmental best practices. Lastly, we're asking residents to help by clearing the snow away from fire hydrants, as you've heard before, So please do that. And storm drains near your homes. They should also check that their furnace exhaust and dryer vents are cleared from any snow pile. The Recreation Advisory Committee. All spring sports are reporting registration are proceeding as planned. COVID-19 expectations, waivers, and preparing for practice game management shared with all programs. The Recreation Advisory Committee reviewed the proposed platform tennis, pickleball, and basketball complex at the Community Pool Memorial Park. After discussion and debate, the majority agreed to set this project as the #1 priority of the committee and recommend its full support to move forward. The Madison Environmental Commission. The MEC has booked 2 Master Gardener speakers for talks that will be co-hosted with Chatham Borough, Chatham Township, and Morris Township. It's called Black Gold Composting Simplified, and it will be held on March 22nd. And the second one, Gardening for Pollinators, will be held on April 15th. The Parks Advisory. Parks is currently engaged with Open Space, Madison Historical Society, and Historic Preservation Commission to facilitate the stabilization of the interior of the Luke Miller Forge building on Ridgedale Avenue. The committee continues to review the proposals submitted for the Parks Master Plan. A presentation will be given to Open Space as well as the Parks Advisory Committee, describing the scope of the master plan, as well as describing the differences between a landscape architect master plan and a townwide planning master plan. Shade tree management. The Shade Tree Management Board, in conjunction with DPW, is finalizing the spring tree planting list. The emphasis this year will be on to plant trees on the major roadways entering Madison, as well as meeting specific resident requests. Residents requesting new street trees should contact Shade Tree Management at 973-593-3088. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. And utilities, Ms. Ehrlich.
You're muted.
You're not muted, but we're not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. The electric department reports that, as with our other departments, they worked through the February 1st and 2nd snowstorm to keep our substations and our parking lot clear and accessible. Due to the high winds and heavy snow, the entire department remained on standby for any emergency issues. And they are pleased to report that despite the inclement weather, there were no power outages during the storm last week. Following the storm, as you've heard, the electric department, along with the meter interns, assisted the fire department and other departments in clearing snow from the town fire hydrants. Last Thursday, February 4th, the department received a delivery of 1,152 electric smart meters, so the meter department can once again proceed with electric meter upgrades. This is a particularly exciting milestone because this, by my count, will be the final phase of meter upgrades, bringing us up to 100% smart meter adoption throughout the borough. So we're on the brink of realizing the first major phase of this great project to upgrade our local infrastructure. From the water department excavated Route 124 at number 120, that's the Drew University Alumni House, to disconnect service to that building, and also excavated the curb box at 41 Highland Avenue to replace the valve box and rod there so it could be used for a private contractor to perform work in the customer's house. In addition to those items, the water department lent a helping hand by removing heavy snow that fell on Sunday and Monday last week. I also want to mention that we've got some great news that ties into some national news that we got 2 weeks ago. Perhaps you've heard that President Biden signed an executive order on January 27th, ending federal subsidies for fossil fuels, aiming to double United States offshore wind capacity by 2030, and directing infrastructure planning to accelerate transmission and clean energy build-out. The executive order also called for electrifying the federal vehicle fleet. Well, here in Madison, we are keeping up as we work to electrify our municipal fleet. Last week, the borough submitted a really excellent grant application for a battery-powered electric shuttle bus to replace the 2013 bus currently used by the Madison Senior Center to transport seniors and mobility-impaired residents. The shuttle makes an average of 10 to 25 round-trip rides per day for seniors. Madison volunteer Peter Freed did an incredible amount of work to get the grant for the electric vehicle senior bus submitted. And with special thanks to Michael Pelessier and Bob Duffy for pulling together information for the application, I can say it's really an impressive piece of work, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we will have some great news from that submission. We also got some great news just days after the last council meeting when we announced the great progress on electric vehicle charging station. We received another grant from the state to install 10 more electric vehicle charging stations in Madison, which is going to bring our number of charging stations to really quite a remarkable ratio for a town of our size. So we're making great progress to electrify and to encourage EV uptake in Madison. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And probably the reason your microphone didn't work at first is because I had skipped past the community affairs report from Ms. Cohen. So we'll go back, we'll circle back. Community affairs.
Thank you, Mayor. Short report tonight. The next meeting of the Downtown Development Commission is scheduled for Thursday, February 18th at 7:15 via Zoom. The Taste of Madison Committee met and began planning the Taste of Madison 2021. The event will have a completely different format this year, thanks to COVID, but should be a great experience for restaurant owners and participants alike. It will occur from May 14th to May 23rd instead of on March 22nd. Stay tuned for more details in the coming weeks. Chris Pfeiffer of Pfeiffer Designs will speak to the businesses at the upcoming virtual network breakfast on Tuesday, February 9th. The topic will be the Madison brand, a look into the design concept and proper use of the new downtown logo. The Red Cross blood drive at the Madison Community Arts Center on Wednesday, January 27th was a success. Another one is scheduled for April, so keep your ears out and eyes out for signups. Since the governor has increased the capacity for indoor activities to 35%, we will begin planning a series of professional staged readings in the Arts Center. Finally, some live theater. And finally, we are in discussions with musicians, dance companies, and comedians about the Spring Ahead into the Art series currently being planned for April, May on Waverly Place. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And health, Mr. Landrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder, January 31st was the deadline for most annual licenses managed through the health department, including pet and food establishments. If you have not renewed your license yet, please submit it as soon as possible. As of today, Madison reports 566 total confirmed COVID-19 cases. While the latter half of the month did see a general downward trend, Morris County has yet to return to pre-Thanksgiving case rates and remains above the New Jersey state average. Vaccine sites in Morris County, including the regional site at the Rockaway Mall, are now open. Appointments can be made at the regional site via atlantichealth.org or by calling 1-855-568-0545. Later this week, New Jersey will see several CVS and Rite Aid pharmacy locations added to its vaccination efforts. Appointments for those locations can be booked directly on the company website. Visit rosenet.org for updates on the vaccination program, testing locations, and other pandemic-related items. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And now we move on to communications and petitions.
Yes, Mayor, none have been received this 2 weeks.
Right, and so now we're on our first of two invitations for discussion. This one is limited to items on our discussion agenda and also our resolutions. There'll be another invitation just later in the meeting that you may speak on any topic. So if you do want to speak in this session, you may raise your hand by clicking on the hand if you're online, or hitting *9 if you are on a phone. And note, for security reasons, we cannot recognize anyone listed anonymous or call without a phone number identified. When you are recognized and unmuted, you must first state your name and address before starting any comments. Failure to do so may result in you being muted or disconnected. And then immediately after that, state the agenda item, which is only one agenda item, or the resolution you're commenting on. Again, if you want to comment on a ordinance, we'll have hearings for the ordinances that were advertised, and we will have a second comment period for anything on any other topic. And so as not to take from your time, we will capture any questions and cover it during the discussions. We ask that you try to keep your comments in 3 minutes, but you'll be given a 1 minute grace period and stop at 4. So again, the discussion items, as Councilwoman Bailey stated, the budget hearing, our draft budget discussion, and then these are the following resolutions that you may comment on. A shared service agreement for IT with Berkeley Heights and Mountain Lakes, as Madison leads the way with shared services. A resolution 60 is awarding contract to Shivano Construction for paving improvements under our co-op bid, and this is not to exceed $340,000. This is for the mill and overlay program for 2021 and funded through ordinance 8/2021. Resolution 61 is awarding a contract to micropage systems for crack sealing, also co-op bid under and there's not to exceed 50,000, also funded through ordinance 8. And then resolution 63, authorizing settlement of tax appeals. Resolution 64 is a awarding contract to Reed Systems Limited for purchase of EnviroBrine liquid melting agent, not to exceed 17.5, and this comes out of the Public Works 2021 budget. Brine, in other words. Resolution 65 is temporarily amending chapter 166 of sidewalk dining licenses, and that is to continue the expanded sidewalk dining that we have approved for help the restaurants through the pandemic. Resolution 66 is accepting a grant from It Pays to Plug In vehicle charging grant program through the Department of Environmental Protection. As Councilwoman Ehrlich mentioned, this is a grant of $40,000. Resolution 67 is an agreement between the Borough of Madison and Madison Volunteer Ambulance Corps regarding the application of federal grant assistance for firefighters grant program. Resolution 68 is authorizing purchase of backhoe loader through the Educational Services Co-op. And this is funded pending the approval of the 2021 budget and not to exceed $186,000. Resolution 69 is authorizing purchase of non-contract items for the wheel loader. This is accessory items not to exceed $6,700, also from 2021 budget. Resolution 70 is approving raffle licenses for St. Vincent Martyr Church. Resolution 71 is appointing Francis Boardman to a position of Administrative Secretary for Utility Advisory Committee at a stipend of $1,125 for 2021. Resolution 72 is approving temporary pinwheels and a sign at the Madison Safety Complex sponsored by Madison Girl Scouts. And then there's a resolution that will be read into the record that will be authorized in a contract with Merrill Garaguso for the work on the plaza at Hartley Dodge at the amount of $1,066,800 and change. And so you may comment on any of those resolutions or the budget agenda item. And you'll also be aware of what's in the consent agenda when that comes up later. Anyone wishing to comment, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I close this part of the meeting. And just to, as I started doing the last meeting, that since people attending the meeting may not be able to see all the attendees right now, including some staff members, we have 17 attendees at our meeting. We now move on to the agenda discussion, budget hearing. And Oscar already teed this up, and so we'll bring up Jim, unless Oscar, you have anything else to set the stage with? Nope. All right, Jim.
Okay, Mayor, thank you. Going to share my screen here and we'll start the presentation. Bear with me here, I apologize. Austri discussed the proposed hearing schedule, so we're not going to go into details on that. I do want to say that 2020 was a financially challenging year. This is a headline from the Bergen Record from Friday, December 11th, 2020. It has been quite a challenge for us, more difficult for other towns, but it's been a challenge. Some of the challenges, I'm not going to go into details here. This is for public consumption more, but I'll just quickly point out that municipal revenues were off by $1 million. Tax appeals and limited construction have a potential impact for many years. Pension costs continue to increase. Our sewage treatment costs are increasing and our capital funding is down. We'll be talking about all these items in the presentation ahead. We should be able to fund a $2 million electric dividend, and we could possibly consider an additional funding of $100,000 in COVID relief. We do have a number of major capital projects, even though our funding for capital is down. We have a number of projects already in the works and already funded, including a $9.5 million project for the sewage treatment plant. There'll be no changes in services to the residents, and we do have money set aside for the water meter replacement program. I really think the most important point is that because of the sound financial decisions made in years past, Madison is in a good financial position relative to other towns, and we will be able to weather this financial storm much better than most municipalities. So here's a municipality that is struggling, not to pick on anyone, but it happens to be in the newspaper, and I clipped it, Garfield, New Jersey, in order to pay because they have cash flow shortfalls, had to go out in December and issue $2 million in bonds to just to cover their expenses. So it's like borrowing money to pay for the groceries. We're fortunately not in that position because we had strong reserve balances, but many towns, excuse me, Mayor, are struggling. And we're not alone. Municipal revenues are off by $1 million, and that is significant. Daily annual permit fees and parking permit fees were off by $140,000 in 2020. Court fines were off by $165,000. Interest on bank balances were down. We're no longer providing health shared services this year in this year's budget, so that is a drop of $120,000, though there is a corresponding reduction in expenses, and our construction code fees were down. And fortunately, as I said before, I'll say again, the strategic planning guidelines really helped us make sure that our fund balance and our reserves were appropriate and able to help us weather the storm. Municipal fund balance, this is what we used to call surplus, but we're calling it fund balance. That's really what the New Jersey Government Finance Officers Association wants us to call it. Typically, on an annual basis, non-taxable revenues are in excess of what we budget. So in 2019, we had 500,000 in revenues in excess of what we budgeted. What does that mean? Let's say we budgeted 500, anticipating 500,000 in construction fees. We might have gotten $650,000. That additional $150,000 ends up in here. So the revenues were so challenging that we actually ended up in a negative situation where the non-taxable revenues were 700,000 less than what we had anticipated. This resulted in a significant drop in our fund balance and a significant drop in what we've referred to in the past as free balance. We'll continue to refer to it as free fund balance. A significant drop from 5 million to 3.1 million. This is our reserve. This is our cushion. It is concerning, and we really need to monitor this going forward this year and into next year. This is a summary of our free balance of what we had at the end of at the beginning of 2019, and what we had at the beginning of 2020, and what we now have at the beginning of 2021. These are best case guesstimates as to what it will be like in a year and in 2 years. We talked about this back in April, that we want to see a flight path where we're coming down and then leveling off. We don't want to see a flight path or a trajectory where we continue to drop. That's going to be significant. This is very concerning, and we need to monitor this, and that's exactly what administration will do over the coming year. So we've also lost revenue in our budget from new ratables. You may recall in the past our Conleyville illustration, and this year this illustration is at the end of the presentation, and out of respect for my wonderful finance liaison, we're going to call it Austryville. So if you scroll to the end of the presentation, you'll see that we talk about Austryville, and it talks about how new construction can really, and new ratables can really help the town. That's there for people who want to see it. But I can tell you that over the last 4 years, from 2019 through 2020, we've had new ratables that have kicked in significant amount of municipal tax relief. This year, we had a very small amount, only $25,000. To be honest with you, I'm happy it wasn't negative. But the outlook for the office building market is bleak for many years to come, and we should expect continued tax appeals from Giralda Farms and other office buildings. And the number that we use in the budget, which we'll see in a few minutes, taxes from new ratables, could even turn negative in 2022 and beyond. So here are our largest taxpayers in 2020. Special note that GVR here, the KRE development at the old Greenville Road School, is $832,000. That includes all the pilot they pay. They also do pay land tax, not tax on the improvement, but land tax. But notice that our two huge office buildings, Realogy on Park Avenue and Giralda 5, which is this building here, pay a significant amount of taxes. Councilwoman Bailey touched on it in her report, saying that if you add up the office buildings, take out Rose Hall and add in Giralda 3, it's over $5 million, and we're collecting a total of $72 million in taxes. So a deterioration of these values is going to, of their assessed values, is going to result in them paying less in taxes, which is a real concern. I always like to do this. It's just a quick image of showing where the pictures are. This is Woodland Road here, and this is Madison Avenue here. I think everybody recognizes the V-shaped building. Here's Allergan. I'll touch on our department appropriations, and then we'll jump right into the municipal budget. These are our largest department appropriations. This includes fringe. I know the police and fire may look high, but based on other municipalities, they are certainly in line. And it's important to note that police and fire, unlike other departments like Department of Public Works and others, they're on duty 24/7, 365. So tonight, there are police officers working here in the borough of Madison while DPW is not working. They typically work during the day. This graphically shows the department expenses and then shows all the various departments. And we've shown that for a number of years. I think it's just important to see the relative scale of each of the departments. And this is the 5-year trend of the various departments. Now, I want to point out, and we'll touch this a little bit later, over 4 years, the police and fire pension has gone up $300,000. So that's reflected in these numbers. So while we're seeing some significant increases in police and fire, I apologize, police and fire, here's fire here. We're seeing significant increase in police and in fire. Keep in mind that some of that is purely out of our control. This is the municipal budget, and we'll go into details. This is what we fondly call the budget in brief. If you go on RoseNet, you'll be able to see a similar document to this going back, I think, to the 90s. So you'll really be able to track kind of in a one-sheet budget summary what the borough municipal budget looks like. And Mayor, if it's okay with you, I'm going to kind of blitz through the presentation, and then we'll do questions afterwards. But if anybody does have a question, just jump in. The overall budget is dropping this year by $730,000. That's this number right here. That's a significant drop, a reduction in our budget. It hasn't happened in years. Most of that is due to us reducing the amount that we're contributing to the general capital fund from 3.5 million to 2.8 million. It's important to note that every appropriation line that we control is flat or down. You can see the salaries for the police and fire are down. The salaries for other municipal employees are down. The department operating expenses are down. We don't control directly the sewage treatment plant costs. That's based on formulas, and there's some DEP mandates that are causing that. We don't control other expenses that have bumped up here, such as, for example, the health insurance or the pension costs. But every appropriation line that we control is down, and that's a testament to administration and the department heads understanding the challenges at the time. As mentioned, pension costs and sewage treatment costs are up 6.5% and 15% respectively. Pension costs, here's more detail, what it cost us to pay for the police and fire pensions in 2018 versus 2021, $300,000 increase. The eye-opening number is that we're paying $31,000 per police or fire uniformed officer. Public employee, that would be DPW, administration, white-collar employees, library employees. Our costs have only gone up by $48,000 in 4 years. That's 93 employees, and the relative cost per employee is much less. As mentioned, the municipal revenues are down by $1 million, and now we'll jump to that side of the budget in brief, and you'll see here it is right here. This is the significant drop that we have to budget for this year. Municipal revenues down 26.5%. That's over $1 million in this budget. We're using a little more electric utility fund balance or surplus in total to fund this. Last year we used 6.6 million. This year we're using 6.8 million. Because we cut the amount of capital that we're funding, the amount of electric utility fund balance for capital fell as well. And that resulted in the amount of electric utility fund balance being used for the operating budget to increase significantly. We are anticipating that this will hopefully be a one-year phenomenon, that will be able to use less money from the electric utility fund balance for the operating. I do want to point out that we did have a small dollar amount from property taxes for new ratables, and I do want to point out that this budget includes a 2% tax increase. Administration doesn't really see any other way to do it without impacting our long-term financial picture. There's so many unknown situations that we are still facing that we think it would be prudent to have a 2% tax increase. And we'll go into what that impact is in a little bit. This is the water utility, and we have estimates for revenues and expenses and what will happen to the water utility fund balance. We think it will stay relatively the same. We are increasing the amount of money that's going from the water utility into the municipal budget by a little bit. This is our electric utility budget. We had reviewed the past performance. This is our budget for this year. We think we're comfortable that the budget can continue to have a $2 million dividend in it for residents. And if council is interested, we think we can accommodate $100,000 in COVID relief. There continue to be concerns. I'll probably be talking about this 5 years from now about future costs for capacity and transmission. And most notably, if you look at the transmission costs from 2016 to 2020, they've gone up 400%, 529,000 to basically $2 million. Back to the municipal budget, this is that amount that's being transferred in, and I mentioned it before. The strategic planning guidelines encourage reducing this transfer. However, given this budget year, administration supports doing this and think it's completely appropriate to do this for this year. This is a new slide I snuck in from what you had seen earlier in what was distributed to council. I just wanted to show the 5-year capital plan because we talk about revenues in this presentation, talk about difficult decisions, and some of the difficult decisions are going to be based on capital. This year, our general capital amount that we are asking for in our 5-year capital plan is $3.8 million. We can fund that. Even though we're only putting $2.8 million into the general capital improvement fund, we can fund that $3.8 million. But it's the out year numbers. It's the numbers in 2022, 23, and 24 where we have significant more expenses. We've got a fire truck that is coming in the out years here. We have a radio system. We have a lot of other expenses that we may need to curtail. You can see how much we curtailed road reconstruction and milling and overlay this year versus next year. We may need to continue to do that. That's some of the difficult decisions that we think we're going to be faced with later on in the year and in 2022's budget. Having said that, I do want to recognize that Madison offers tremendous services. This is a chart we've shown before that the average home, which is valued at $667,000, pays property taxes about $13,000. The municipal portion is less than $3,000. This was for 2020, and they got all these services. The 2% increase that administration is asking for represents, I've got a little extra digit here, it represents $4.21 per quarter in municipal property taxes for this home. So maybe per quarter, one less trip to Starbucks to help stabilize and help fund the municipal budget, we think is a reasonable ask. With that, our thoughts are that Madison is fortunate to have the reserves to weather the storm. This is an austere budget. There are a number of concerns that we have to monitor: the tax appeals, which we talked about, the revenue generation. We just don't know what's going to happen with parking, court, interest earned, construction, the municipal fund balance, which really kind of is an indicator of our strength and our ability to continue to operate without having significant changes. Garfield didn't have the fund balance, so they had to borrow. There's obviously the possible change in property taxes paid by Geralda Farms in Atlantic Health, and we can talk a little bit about that. There's a bill pending that would preclude them from having to pay typical ad valorem property taxes and classify them as a hospital. We also have expiring collective bargaining contracts with all the borough unions. We'll know more about these issues at the end of the 2021. We consider this budget right now a wait and see year, very austere, but not major changes. We will have a better, clearer picture in September or October what 2022's financial picture will look like, and we'll report back to council at that point. Administration thinks that there are a number of budget decisions for council. There have been requests either for staff from various department heads or other funding or other programs. Does council want to change any of the services? Is council comfortable with the 2% tax increase? Is council comfortable with the $2 million electric dividend? And do you want to consider a COVID relief program? And this is the keeping the following in mind, the concerns that we have in the out years: the radio system, the fire truck, major upgrades, a lot of capital items. We have a debt service that's going to be coming due that's over $300,000 that we have to start paying in 2022. We did fund this year more sidewalk repairs. Will that be able to continue? And alike. So with that, we'll happily take any questions.
Great. Thank you, Jim, for, as always, a very good presentation. And just a couple of quick comments, and we'll get more questions and comments from the council. A year ago at this time, we had a very, as far as tax increase, we were looking at that same 2%. And then we realized, as in the coming weeks, that things were really going downhill quickly. And we had an extended discussion about reducing that 2%. And at that time, talked about the fact that just bringing it down to that 1%, which we did, was going to have impact on the out years. And so that, with all things considered, this is probably a very reasonable, and especially when you look at the $1 million of lost revenue, that a 2% is, in this day and age, any increase is always tough, but keeps the borough in good footing, and has a lot of initiatives that you mentioned. And the one of them, which if we decide to do another round of the COVID relief you talked about, could be the targeted rebates for electric customers, whether resident business or small businesses only. That really, the impact I got from chamber members truly made a great impact. As don't know whether I said to the council, but I did hear from a business owner that has shops in multiple towns and said what Madison did was above and beyond what other towns, and they were so appreciative of that support. And the capital reduction in capital dollars, obviously, is, as you've pointed out, can't be ongoing, but it's what shouldn't be lost on here is a number of capital projects we'll be managing this year is probably about as much as we could anyway, with the plaza that we spoke about earlier, and the and hopefully launching the final renovation of the East Wing. So there's plenty to keep our staff going, and we'll be reinvesting in Madison at extraordinary levels. All right, Bob,
Yeah.
and then Deb.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Jim, first of all, I want to say that to me, this is a very tough year. And I think you and the administrator have done a great job with the budget. That said, looking at the maintenance work, the ongoing work that has to be done on roads, I think the proper approach is being taken, because if you put things off too long, it's going to wind up costing much more money to fix them in the long term. So I think a good prudent approach has been taken over the course of the years. And I also look at what the different departments have done. And if you look at the fire department, they recognize that they need a new truck. So they've pushed that out as far as they can go, because if it goes too long, that cost is going to go up. But if you could flip back to the page in the presentation where you had the taxes paid by the real estate taxes paid. I'll tell you when to stop. Keep right there. And then there's another one. What I see here happening is this. I see Geralda, Realogy, and some of the other corporate tenants, they're going to pay less in taxes more than likely, because they're going to get a tax reduction. What about tax appeals? I mean, that's kind of like a compound effect, that they may get a reduction this year if the values go down. And well, I'll tell you right now, I do New York City, and the major office buildings there have got down 20%. I mean, they're getting hit hard. And what they're doing is they're going ahead of the curve, meaning to avoid legal fees, to avoid court costs, they're voluntarily reducing the assessed values. But New York has a bigger revenue base. So if you take all that into consideration, the revenues this year may go down, tax appeals are coming. Is there more of an effect that we have to budget for? You know, I know that there's a lot of vacant space, and I can see a lot more coming, and the models seem to indicate that unless these buildings are repurposed quickly, they can remain vacant for a long time.
This is one of the administration's two largest concerns. One is, will revenues come back? When will commuter parking come back? Will interest on our bank deposits come back? Will construction start up again? Will the court start up again? That's number one, is the revenue generation is the first concern. The second concern is exactly what you're talking about here, Bob, is these tax appeals. It's like in the example of Ostreyville, which people can look at, when there's more people at the table, that you're able to spread the bill out a little bit more, the check for the dinner. In this particular instance, what you're talking about is actually less people at the table, which means the other people have to kick in more. So that's a concern. I don't think we'll be in a situation where we'll have to kick in a lot more, but we'll be in a situation where we won't get that, we won't have this happening. We won't get an extra $100,000 in the budget because of new ratables. Any of the new ratables that come online, hopefully, from a CFO standpoint, hopefully 14 Lincoln Place gets built at some point. Other construction that is occurring in town that you can see, all of that construction that generates ratables will be offset by what you talked about, Bob, the deterioration in the office market. I mean, 5 million of 71 million in tax revenue is significant. Fortunately, we're not like other towns like Parsippany that have an entire Route 10 corridor with office space that's not doing well, but it's still a very serious concern. So thank you for bringing it up.
Okay.
Are you done, Bob? I don't want to cut you off.
I'm good. Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. All right. I have quite a few questions, and I'm just going to go not slide by slide through every slide, but give you the slide number so you know where I'm at. In slide 9, where we talk about the new ratables, just to clarify, because as I drive around town, and I know many people do,
Wrong one, sorry.
There's construction everywhere, or seemingly construction everywhere. And so my assumption is, and I just want you to clarify, that new ratables is not just the new construction, but it's somebody adding a bathroom, but obviously that's not as much as a big building or something like that.
That's exactly correct. So any construction permit that goes through, almost all of it ends up in an increase in ratables. A bathroom could increase someone's home value the improvement on the property by $10,000, or a new kitchen could increase it by $40,000. A new addition could increase it by a couple $100,000. So additions and improvements do add to the rateable base, just as a new home would add to it, or a complete new construction like the garage in Tiralda at Tiralda 5 at Allergan.
Right. And then on slide 10, just to clarify somewhat for the public, because I think I've got this right, that 832,000 for GVR, that's all inclusive, like it says on the slide, but that means that some of that's going to the pilot to the schools, and some of that's going to the county and the land tax. So we're not seeing, we're just a pass through for a large portion of that 832,000.
Yeah, correct. Just like Giralda, Allergan, not all that money is going to our budget. It's going to fund the school, as Austria mentioned, Councilwoman Bailey mentioned in the beginning of her report. It's going to fund the Board of Education and fund the county. In this particular instance, you're exactly right, Councilwoman Cohen. This is 832,000. If you look at our municipal budget, if I can flick to it without getting too without going too fast, you will see that we are realizing $430,000 of it. So you're exactly right. You're exactly right. A portion of it is going to land taxes, and a portion of it is going to the Board of Education and the county.
All right, and then on slide 12, two quick questions. Department of Public Works, how much does overtime from all these storms and things like the tornado and all of that, is that a huge impact? I don't need an exact number, but are we talking, thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars?
Yeah, I'm actually going to look at an email. Ray probably has it memorized, but I I believe it's about $40,000 that for this storm alone, for DPW overtime. That's not, we also had overtime from the electric utility, and overtime for the fire department. So it is significant. That represents about a quarter. I believe we have $169,000 in this budget for snow removal. And keep in mind that the snow removal is from January to December. So we have the first winter, which is January, February, March, but we certainly have had snow events and ice events that require DPW in December. So we are going to be using a lot of our overtime there. Hopefully we'll have enough funds there, but enough with the snow already.
I hear you. And then on the same slide, the library budget seems very, very large. And I know there's some goofy formula or rate that we have to follow, but do we have any control over that budget?
We have a portion of it we control. There is something called the mill rate, which we have to fund any municipal public library we fund, but we do give the library an extra $100,000 for utility subsidy. And there is some talk about working with the board there to say we all need to realize austerity and to talk about reclaiming and not having them utilize some of that utility budget. Every year, the library does a good job with the funds that they receive, and they don't spend all of their budget. And what they've done in the past, and this is legal, that they've asked for the extra money that they didn't spend. And we literally write a check at the end of December and send it to them, and they deposit it and hold it for future accrued liabilities, such as an employee that has vacation time and accrued comp time or sick time when they retire. They can get paid out of that fund, and they have some significant accrued liabilities. So they take those funds. This past year was over 200,000 that was transferred to them. So there may be some conversations, and that's another one of those hard decisions, right? Or the hard decisions we need to be thinking about is, can we talk to the library and ask for them to help us out here and to share in the austerity.
Well, minimally, we have to fund them at the mill rate. So it's
right.
So the flexibility is at the allowance that we put in years ago. I think Austria was on board at that point. Then that was on the council did not charge the library for electricity, which did not give a true cost of running the operation. So we started charging library for electricity, also encouraged conservation.
And then we also gave them money to help offset it so they did not cut services.
So I guess, Jim, my question with that is, in the next week or two, is it possible to find out maybe the past 3 years, what the excess is that we've given them in December? I don't want to shortchange the library at all. I think what they're doing, and they're adapting to technology and adding great programs. And I know they'll continue that, and they've been doing a great job virtually, but I'm just curious over the past few years, what that's been, to see if anything can be done there. Probably not, but, and then my last question, and then I'm done, is, I think it's now slide 26 or 27. It's the one that says budget decisions for council. I think as far as a COVID relief program for me, and obviously we'll need to discuss it as a council, the biggest concern is, even if things are normal this summer, where restaurants can get back in business and around, the effects are going to be so long-term on the downtown for the past year of no business to little business. We need to make sure that we are helping them in some way with whatever money we can, so that we don't wake up one morning to businesses that tried to make it through, and just couldn't get that last leg because it wasn't enough. So I think it's definitely something we need to consider to make sure that our downtown stays vibrant and populated, and a nice variety of stores. So that's all. Thank you.
And Jim, I was going to suggest to continue to share a screen, so rather than going back and forth.
Back and forth. I was going to ask you what you wanted, Mayor. Got it.
And Austria and then Maureen.
Okay, so Jim, I have a question. Because of the pandemic, the director of the State Division of Local Government Services issued a local finance notice authorizing towns to anticipate 2021 budget revenues differently. So this allowed the municipalities to use a 3-year average. Can you explain how that works? Because this is different for us than any other year. And can you also explain how that is different from a typical year and what the revenues are? And if we anticipate in the budget using this 3-year average method?
Correct. So we had talked about this a couple months ago when it came out, Austria, that the DLGS, Division of Local Government Services, issued this local finance notice because they realized that there were going to be towns like our good friends in Morris Township. We were talking to Mayor Brazel a few weeks ago during a joint court meeting, and he talked about how significantly impacted they are with their hotel tax, that their hotel tax is down so much, it's down so significantly. The state budget statutes demand that the CFO cannot anticipate more revenue in a particular line than was actually collected the prior year. So let's use construction permits as an example. If we collected typically $600,000 in 2019, 2018 in construction permits, and this past year we collected $400,000 because there was a pandemic and there was a slowdown in construction, we would be forced to only collect $400,000 in our budget this year. We can anticipate a little more. We've been conservative, and there's not too many lines in here where we're anticipating more. We are anticipating a little more in parking revenues. We are anticipating a little more in certain licenses and certain permits such as fire prevention and the like, but we're not going to the max on the average of the 3 years on every line because we just don't know what's going to happen. I think interest income is a great example. We had significant increases in interest income over the years, and I just don't think that there's any situation where we're going to have an increase, interest rates coming back. And in 2018, the actual revenue from interest income was $307,000, and in 2019 it was $427,000. In 2020 it was $117,000. So that's a tremendous shortfall, and that we can look at short-term interest rates and say that's not coming back anytime soon. So we, to answer your question, Councilwoman Bailey, we're not using that 3-year average on many, but there are a few revenue lines where we are using it. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Maureen?
Yes, thank you. So on the reval, on a revaluation on property, specifically the Giralda properties, if we have to pay back because it's been reevaluated, the town is responsible for the full amount. We don't get a clawback from the county or the Board of Education payments. Am I correct?
Yes, you're correct in that. So we have a tax appeal reserve. We fund it every year, and it's a pot of funds. And people were questioning, why do we keep funding this? Why do we have a tax appeal reserve? It's for this exact situation. And you are 100% correct, Council President Kern. If we have a successful tax appeal, and I think Councilman Landrigan's 100% correct, we're going to have successful tax appeals with our office buildings. We have multiple years of tax appeals with them. We just don't have 2020. We have 2020, 2019, 2018. There are some properties in town where we have 4 or 5 years of tax appeals outstanding. Typically, we try to negotiate and say, let's get rid of the old ones and we'll do what's called a step down. We won't pay you anything, but your future assessed value will be lower. We've been successful in offering that, but this year that's not the case. We are definitely going to have to pay money out, and we paid the Board of Education their entire money based on what we thought we'd collect from that person. We paid the county all their money, but we don't get to ask for any of that money back from them. We have to foot the entire bill.
And I had one other question. Last year, we set aside $200,000 for COVID-19 related expenses. How much of that money has been spent, and are we putting another additional $100,000 aside in this budget?
Yeah, let me look that up. Bear with me here. I happen to have the Edmunds system open, and we used $151,035 to be precise of that $200,000. We do have a CARES Act submission for a refund, a grant from the federal government to get some of our money back on that. This year's budget, we put in $100,000. Now, that does not include the COVID relief that Councilwoman Cohn and Mayor Conley were talking about in terms of the electric utility rebates. That is purely what we use to buy PPE, what we use to buy the barriers outside that we used for the outside dining, what we used for employee overtime, additional employee overtime that we weren't anticipating. That's where all of that was funded from. So this year we have 100,000 in there, and we think that's going to be, we hope that's going to be sufficient.
Okay, and finally, I understand that our collective bargaining agreements for the 7 years is expiring this year?
Yes. Did mention that in the somewhere, I think, in the presentation, and it is something we need to be conscious of, that all 7 unions are up at the end of the year. The contracts are up at the end of the year. Previously, there was a 2% arbitration cap. That arbitration cap is not there anymore. We have had some initial discussions with some of the unions, and we hope that they understand the difficult financial situation that we are in. But yes, that is another one of the, not to sound like Don Rumsfeld, is very jokes, but that's one of those known unknowns. We know it's an issue. We don't know what the solution or what the actual number is going to be. So it is a concern for 2022 and beyond.
Thank you.
Button. Everyone, any other questions or comments?
I do, Bob, Mayor. Hello. I have some questions.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
go
you.
ahead.
Okay, so Jim, are we going to be getting the same amount of state aid, or is there any chance we're going to get more state aid this year?
We're still showing a slide here. I would put that in the not going to happen category.
We're not going to get anything?
No, we're going to get it. We're just not going to get any more. We've been stuck at 808,000, 808,529. We've been stuck at, I think, since 2014. So the challenge is that's not going up, but our expenses are going up. So the amount of state aid as a percentage of our total revenue continues to drop and continues to become less relevant and less of an impact. But we are anticipating in this budget the same exact amount as we received in years past.
Okay. So I mean, I see that we're doing a really good job keeping our expenses down on the borough level and the department level. But we have pension costs going up, and I guess some pensions are more costly than others.
Yeah, it seems as though the police and fire pension has been over the course of time more expensive. Is that backwards or forwards? I apologize. Oh, there we go. Found it. So a police officer or a firefighter can retire after 20 or 25 years of work and immediately draw their pension. This is what's called the defined benefit pension. An IRA or a 401k is a defined contribution pension. You contribute to it. Your company contributes to it. It's a dollar bank account you have. The defined benefit plan says we're going to give you 70% of your salary when your last year's salary when you retire from X to when you pass away. For police and fire, they can take their pensions immediately. So there's an example here we can go over, but it's worth mentioning that it costs more because after 25 years, they can immediately retire and take their full pension. There's no age requirement. So a police officer hired at age 22 can retire at age 47 after 25 years and immediately receive their full pension for the rest of their life. So let's say they live till they're 85 years old or 87 years old. They worked for 25 years. They received a pension for 40 years. So that's significant. And because of that, the pension costs are so much higher. As opposed to a public employee, DPW, white collar, the folks in the clerk's office at Hartley Dodge, they're in the PERS system, Public Employee Retirement System, and they typically cannot receive a full pension until they're age 60 or 65. So unlike age 47 for a police officer, age 60 to 65. As a result, less years are being paid and the employees tend to stay longer, so they work more than 25 years, and then they receive less than 25 years as opposed to the police officer maybe receiving 40. As a result, the pension costs for us are much less. I do want to say we're fortunate. We have some friends in other towns. Verona, not to call them out, got clobbered with their pension bills. And it's literally a one-page bill that they mail to you, and they were clobbered by over 20%, where our pension costs didn't increase to that extent, but they are.
Okay. And then I want to focus in just a little bit on the joint meeting, and I think probably residents don't understand that we have this joint meeting with Chatham, and we are now bonding for a rather large project. And how does that affect, this budget and the future budgets? And
Sure, there's two things actually. If we can talk about, we'll talk about that first. So over $6 million has been authorized in debt, and the borough of the $9.5 million project, Chatham Borough, will be picking up the other portion of it, and that debt will result in an additional $300,000 in debt service payments. So that won't fall in the joint meeting processing line. That cost will bump up our debt service by $300,000. We'll probably see it go up by $150,000. I'm sorry, this number here go up by $150,000 in 2022, and then by $300,000 in 2023. So that's significant, right? It's like $300,000. That is, our property tax increase is only $300,000. That's the entire 2%. So that's going to be a significant increase in costs. And I referenced it before that two costs that are going up are pension, which you mentioned, and then the sewage treatment processing. The reason the sewage treatment processing is going from 1.13 million to 1.3 million is twofold. There's a new Department of Environmental Protection mandate that we have to do additional treatments for phosphorus in the wastewater that's released. And so that's number one. So we have to have additional costs in that budget. And that budget is split between Madison and Chatham. And I know council is aware of this, but it's good for the public to know every year that bill between Madison and Chatham is split based on the sewage flow that comes from each town. This past year, Madison's sewage flow was 2% higher than last year. So we are paying a greater percentage of the budget than we did in 2020. So the combination of the phosphorus remediation and the percentage increase of our share of the budget resulted in this $170,000 or 15% increase.
Okay. And then the final question I have is, we periodically have to have revaluation of our homes, our properties. Do we anticipate that happening anytime soon? Since I think the last one was maybe 10 or 12 years ago. And how does that affect us going forward?
I would say that we are on deck or double deck. We used to play when you played Little League, you're on deck or I'd say we're a few years out. I don't think it's going to be next year where we're declared by the county board to have to do it. It has to do with our equalized assessed value. And when it drops to a certain amount, our number is up. And there are about 4 towns or 5 towns that are in the process of doing a reval or being told that they have to do a reval. So I don't think it's going to happen in 2023, but I could see in 2024, 2025, us doing the reval. At that point in time, a company will come in, they'll value the homes, and it's all basically dividing up that tax bill in what is then the fair value of one home versus or one property to another property. So as the offices continue to deteriorate, we could see that play out in the reval where residential is paying more and the offices are paying less, or the commercial district is paying less. It all depends on the market. I mean, I think everybody knows that the residential market in 2020 was relatively strong because of the flight of people coming from from New York City and Jersey City and Hoboken out to Madison. That's subsided, but depending on what happens in the different markets, residential, higher residential, lower residential, commercial, office, that could reappropriate the taxes, and one segment could pay more or less than another.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Rachel?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Jim. That was a terrific presentation, really thorough, sobering to be sure. But my takeaway here, if I can just summarize at a high level, is that we are in this budget proposing to maintain all services and even a moderate level of capital investment, despite the loss of municipal revenue. In part by slightly increasing the amount of the electric utility surplus to be transferred to the municipal budget to cover operating expenses. And as you point out, our strategic planning guidelines, that we adopted in 2014, urge us to go in the other direction, to reduce the amount that we transfer to cover operating expenses. So I just want to understand that you had a note about whether the administration supports reducing the amount, or in this case, because this is expected to be perhaps a one-off year or a one-time increase where we increase the amount of surplus. It sounds like the administration is cautiously, supporting this slight increase in the amount that we transfer, even though in this extraordinary year, it doesn't jive with the strategic planning guidelines. So the way I'm reading this is that the currently proposed budget, which seems well balanced and, like I said, maintains services and has a moderate level of capital investment, it preserves the electric dividend. There's a possibility to provide additional COVID relief this year. It sounds like the difficult decisions that we may have to contemplate would be looking ahead to next year and the known unknowns that you referred to. So, you've characterized this as a wait and see year. On the balance, no pun intended, it doesn't seem like a bad year, but it's, I am nervous about looking ahead because we don't know what's coming our way. And so even if we can feel, moderately good about taking a little bit more surplus, or rather fund balance, shall we say, this year, is a slippery slope where we're going to be sort of, how are we going to adjust the glide path, I guess is what I'm asking. Not asking you to tell the future, but.
Well, I would just point out that there were years where we took more in electric surplus or fund balance from the electric utility and transferred it to the municipal budget. And I know you all love it when I pull out my 1941 document that I found in my dad's archives that shows us pulling a tremendous amount from the electric utility back in 1944. So it wouldn't be out of the realm if next year we saw things getting better, but it was still not a great year on the revenues, that we said, look, it's just going to be another year where we take more, a little more from the electric utility. You make hay when there's sunshine. Municipal revenues are struggling, but the electric utility is doing okay. That would be reasonable. I think it's the long-term concept that Councilman Wolkowitz and others put in, and the strategic planning committee of saying, hey, that's something that you want to keep an eye on. I think that's the most important thing. So I think you hit the nail on the head. It's wait and see. We're cautiously optimistic. There'll be decisions that will need to be made in 2022 and 2023 when we have more information.
And there will be a presentation coming up on this budget put up against the strategic goals too.
Yeah, so exactly right, Mayor. The next council meeting, we'll put it up against the guidelines. Actually, weirdly enough, some of the guidelines we were out of compliance because we had too much surplus. We don't have that problem anymore. So we're in compliance with certain guidelines.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? So, yeah, Jim?
Just one thing, Mayor, I just want to shout out, today's my 29-year anniversary. The frog got the princess in 1992, and I want to thank my wife for putting up with me.
Happy anniversary. And Sarah, if you're watching, please don't say you are. No.
Get ready for the Nautilus.
No, that's a joke with Ray. One year when we had young kids, Sarah wanted to go to the Nautilus for our anniversary dinner. And then last year, I think we went to Smash Burger. This year we had a very nice meal.
As long as it works for all involved. And moving right along.
Thanks, Ray.
So I think the guidance here, I think people are fairly happy with what you presented. So continue along its path, and we will eventually give a budget a blessing. So more to come at our next meeting. All right, we now move on to ordinances for hearing. Will the clerk please read the statement?
The ordinance is scheduled for hearing were introduced by title and passed on first reading at the regular meeting of the council held on January the 25th, 2021. All were posted and filed according to law, and copies were made available to the general public requesting same.
I call up ordinances for second reading. Ask the clerk to read said ordinances by title. Ordinance 4-2021.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $26,720 from the Municipal Open Space Trust Fund for architectural plans and specifications at the Madison Masonic Lodge numbered 93.
I open the hearing. Any in the public that wishing to comment on this ordinance, please raise your hand. And okay, and Kristen, you are, we will call you up. And again, this is commenting on ordinance 4-2021. And please try to keep your comments to, oh, hand went down. Or no, you're up. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
So, okay, go ahead with your comments. State name, name and address. Yeah.
Yeah. Kirsten Wallenstein, 4 Westerly Avenue in Madison. And I just wanted to understand better, and I don't know if there's materials, this is my first time commenting on an ordinance, but how the Masonic Lodge relates to the borough and why public funds are being used. And maybe it's that it's like more of a community center and residents will be able to use the facility, but I just looked quickly on the website and it just wasn't clear to me. It seemed like more of a very specific organization. And so I just had that question.
Okay, and what we'll do is we'll capture that, and when we go to public or the council discussion, Austria can address that because she's already raised her hand. We will address that. And Claire Whitcomb, you may now comment on ordinance 4-2021.
Oh, hi. Claire Whitcomb, 12 Fairwood Road. I just wanted to piggyback on what Kirsten said. It'd be also good to know if we're allocating this money for architecture and things like that, if there's any sustainability elements, that will create a lower carbon footprint for Madison. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment on this ordinance, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 4-2021.
Second,
And Austria, you want to comment on the questions that were brought up?
Sure. So we have an open space recreation and historic preservation trust fund that we try to use for all different projects. And the Masonic Lodge is, a wonderful historic building on our streetscape in Madison. And, we pride ourselves in historic preservation. And so we talked, we know that they need help with restoration, and we needed community space, possibly for senior citizen activities. So we entered a conversation with the Masons of the Masonic Lodge, and have right now a public-private partnership to go out for grants. And we did get a partial grant for architectural drawings, which is the first phase of this project. And this is what this money represents. We didn't get completely what we expected, so we're asking open space to cover the difference. And that's what this is about. Then we will go out for construction in the second part of the grant to the county, asking for them to help with that. And Claire, you had a good question, and I'd have to defer to our consultants for that answer. But it's basically to shore up a very old historic building and restore it and get handicap accessible bathrooms in there so that it can be used by the public.
And this, some of these grants would not be possible without this partnership, which is will save a building and create a great partnership. Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Ms. Byrne,
yes.
Mr. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen. Yes. Ms. Ehrlich,
Yes.
Landrigan.
Yes.
I declare ordinance 4-2021 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. Ordinance 5-2021.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Chapter 94, Attachment 3, Appendix C, entitled Electric Utility Department Rules and Regulations.
Mayor, I
open the-
move, oh, pardon me.
Yep. Right. I open the hearing for ordinance 5. Anyone wish to comment on this, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 5-2021.
Second.
Any council discussion? Yep, Rachel?
I just wanted to provide a sentence of explanation here. This ordinance proposes changes to the Borough Code to assign responsibility for the installation and maintenance costs of certain transformers for commercial industrial customers to the owner rather than to the borough. So just a word of clarification about the purpose of this.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Byrne,
Yes.
Mr. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich,
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan.
Yes.
I declare ordinance 5-2021 adopted and finally passed. I ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper and file the ordinance with accordance to the law. Ordinance 6-2021.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Chapter 195-27 of the Madison Borough Code entitled Land Development Ordinance of the Borough of Madison regarding changes in elevation.
Okay, this is not, the planning board did not have an earlier meeting this month, so this has not gone to the planning board. So we will have the hearing as advertised, but we will not be moving nor voting on this until the next meeting after feedback from the planning board. With that, I open the hearing on ordinance 6-2021. Anyone wishing to comment, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I close the hearing. And we move on to ordinance 7-2021.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $1 million from the General Capital Improvement Fund for the 2021 road reconstruction projects, related work, and miscellaneous projects.
I open the hearing on ordinance 7-2021. Anyone wishing to comment, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 7-2021.
Second,
Any council discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Bailey,
Yes.
Ms. Byrne,
yes,
Mr. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen,
yes.
Ms. Ehrlich,
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan.
yes,
I declare ordinance 7-2021 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice there in the newspaper and file the ordinance according to the law. Ordinance 8-2021.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $575,000 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for the 2021 milling and overlay projects.
I open the hearing on ordinance 8. Anyone wishing to comment, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 8-2021.
Second,
Any council discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Ms. Byrne,
yes,
Mr. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen,
yes.
Ms. Ehrlich,
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan.
yes,
I declare ordinance 8-2021 adopted and finally passed. I ask the clerk to publish notice there in the newspaper and file the ordinance in accordance with the law. And now we move on to the second of invitations for discussion. This is when you may comment on any topic. Same rules apply. Try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, but we will ask you, you'll be stopped at 4 minutes after a 1 minute grace period. If you have a comment, your first thing when you're called up is to state your name and address, and then you may start your comments. Failure to state name and address may result in you being disconnected or muted. And I'll open here with Claire.
Here I am again. Hi, it's Claire Whitcomb, 12 Fairwood Road. I just had a super fast comment on the budget. I know that waste removal is a escalating problem in many towns, and some towns are facing high fees. And there was no discussion of that in the budget presentation. And I think waste removal is a fee that is somehow in the utility surplus budget. I also wondered if budget discussions could have some talks, I don't know how, about just what the mayor mentioned about the library, where conservation could cut costs, how we could use sustainability, energy efficiency in places where the borough has expenses. So thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Claire. So we will, on the latter, we can certainly put that as a challenge to all our departments that control buildings or even vehicles, and how they can make a positive impact as they look at budgets. Jim, you want to, the waste removal is not covered by surplus. It is part of the operation budget. In most towns, it would be a separate fee. In fact, many neighboring towns, you can track directly with your hauler, and you may have multiple haulers in a town, where Chatham Borough has a bag charge. So Jim, just a little, what's the trend on waste removal, which we know is not good?
In terms of the summary, Mayor, you're 100% right that it's part of our regular municipal budget. We sometimes look at the amount of electric utility surplus over and say, well, this helps pay for it. This helps pay for capital. the trend is this year, the tipping fees are going up by a few percent. We had a significant increase last year in the hauling charges. But we do have a contract locked in for a few years on hauling. So we anticipate probably 2% increase per year in that budget line. And I think in terms of, or in terms of that appropriation, I don't even think we did increase it. We didn't increase it from 2020 to 2021, Mayor. We had $1,970,000, almost $2 million last year. We have $2 million this year. So we think we can absorb the 2% tipping fee increase in the existing appropriation.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to comment, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I close this part of the meeting and we now move on to introductions of ordinance. Will the clerk please read the statement?
Ordinances scheduled for first reading have a hearing date set for February the 22nd, 2021. All will be published in the Madison Eagle, posted on the bulletin board, and made available to members of the public requesting copies.
I call up ordinances for first reading. Ask the Borough Clerk to read said ordinances by title. Ordinance 9-2021.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison repealing Schedule 2 of Chapter 195-49 Land Development Ordinance for the Borough of Madison.
Mayor, I move ordinance 9-2021.
Second,
Any council discussion? And roll call vote, please. This will be referred to the planning board.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Ms. Byrne,
yes.
Mr. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen,
Yes.
Ehrlich,
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan.
yes,
Ordinance 10-2021.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending Chapter 195-32.5D of the Madison Borough Code entitled CC Community Commercial Zone Regulations.
Mayor, I move ordinance 10-2021.
Second,
Any council discussion? This will also be reviewed by planning board. Roll call vote, please.
Bailey,
Yes.
Byrne,
yes.
Mr. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich,
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan.
yes,
Ordinance 11-2021.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $10,000 from the Electric Capital Improvement Fund for electric vehicle charging stations.
Mayor, I move ordinance 11-2021.
And a second?
I did.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. Any council discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Byrne,
Yes.
Mr. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich,
Yes.
Landrigan.
yes,
Okay, will the clerk please read the consent agenda resolution statement?
Consent agenda resolutions will be enacted with a single motion. Any resolution requiring expenditure is supported by a certification of availability of funds. Any resolution requiring discussion will be removed from the consent agenda. All resolutions will be reflected in full in the minutes.
R 73, which will be read into record, will not be part of the consent. That will be separate.
So, Mayor,
So-
I move,
Yep.
I move resolution 59-2021 to resolution 72-2021.
Second.
Any council discussion or any that need to be pulled?
John has to pull.
Yeah, I know, but
John will,
roll call vote?
we'll just, we'll state, you'll be
Yeah,
abstaining
I'm
on,
gonna abstain from resolution 63-2021 and vote for the others.
correct, and which relate to tax appeals.
and Mayor, I'll be abstaining from R 67-2021.
The ambulance corps partnership as a member of the ambulance corps. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes to all.
Ms. Byrne,
Yes.
Mr. Hoover,
Yes, to all but 63, I'm abstaining.
Ms. Cohen,
Yes to all.
Ms. Ehrlich,
Yes.
Landrigan.
Yes to all except for R 67.
Okay, resolution R 73 will, our attorney will read into the record.
Sure. Good evening. Resolution R 73, 2021. It's a resolution of the Borough of Madison awarding a contract to Merrill and Garaguso for the Hartley Dodge Memorial Plaza restoration in an amount not to exceed $1,066,800. And whereas the Borough of Madison desires to award a contract for the restoration of the Hartley Dodge Memorial Plaza, and whereas the Borough of Madison pre-qualified prospective bidders in accordance with the local public contract law, and whereas the Borough of Madison solicited bid on 2 separate occasions in accordance with the local public contract law, and whereas during both bid solicitations, the bid received exceeded the amount of monies allocated by the Borough of Madison for said restoration, and whereas in accordance with the local public contract law, the Borough of Madison was authorized and did negotiate with the bidders who submitted fully responsive bids for the restoration of the Hartley Dodge Memorial Plaza. And whereas Merrill and Garaguso of Swedesboro, New Jersey provided the most competitive price during the negotiation process, now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the Borough of Madison and the County of Morris and State of New Jersey as follows. 1, a contract with Merrill and Garaguso Incorporated of Swedesboro, New Jersey for the restoration of the Hartley Dodge Memorial Plaza at a total price not to exceed $1,066,800 is hereby awarded, provided that the qualified purchasing agent, administration, and borough attorney are satisfied with the terms of the contract and all required documentation is submitted. The borough clerk is hereby directed to publish notice of the adoption of this resolution in the official newspaper of the Borough of Madison within 10 days of its adoption pursuant to 40A 11-5.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any council discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Byrne,
Yes.
Mr. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich,
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan.
Yes.
And there is no unfinished business for the approval of vouchers. Will the clerk please read the voucher totals?
For the current fund, $411,068.88. For the general capital fund, $84,180.84. Electric operating fund, $122,833.28. Water operating fund, $30,211.88. The water capital fund, $15,236.36. Trust, $23,131.75. The total is $687,262.99.
Mayor, I move approval of the vouchers.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Bailey,
Yes.
Ms. Byrne,
Yes.
Mr. Hoover,
Yes.
Ms. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Ehrlich,
Yes.
Landrigan.
Yes.
All right, under new business, I'd like to make the following appointment, requesting council confirmation for the Utility Advisory Committee, David Cohen, 4 Westerly Avenue, unexpired 3-year term through December 31st, 2021. Have a motion, please.
I'll move it. Oh, I'm sorry, Rachel. I was for you to
That's
do it.
fine. I'll second the appointment of Mr. Cohen.
And for the record, this is Cohen with an H, so no relation to the councilwoman.
No,
All
but
in
he
fa-
gets my mail.
Yeah, it is. You are in the same neighborhood. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Mr. Landrigan,
I move that we adjourn.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
See you.